Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And joining me for some Rockets conversation is co-host of the Bradeaux and Will Show, Rockets analyst Will. And he is at Biased on X. And that's where you can catch him. Can you believe we're just 2 weeks away, Will, from game one of the preseason?
No, I didn't know it was 2 weeks. I thought we had like a month, but I guess that makes sense. It's about that time. So
yeah, I think October the 7th is the first game. So
yeah,
as you and I are sitting here, it's September the 23rd, 2 weeks away. Do you believe any of the Rockets' young core could steal a starting job in the preseason, like Tari or Amen? Anybody that you would like to see steal a starting job?
You're saying like their performance in preseason would give them a starting job?
Yeah, you think any of the we kind of get it's the given the five starters are going to be Sengun, Jabari, Dylan, Fred, and Jalen. Is that what you assume is going to happen?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I think maybe by the end of the season or as the season progresses, we might see a change in the five. I think game one of the regular season is going to be the same starting five as last year. I'm not really sure if there's anything that can be done in the preseason. Maybe if Amen or Tari's is completely forced the issue, but I don't know. I kind of, just being realistic, I kind of don't see that in preseason it would happen. I could probably see it happening as the season progresses, though.
Is there anybody you want to see steal that job?
I guess I want to see how the season plays before I say who I want to start, because I think we do have a pretty solid starting five. I do think that Amen or Tari would be one of the people who could take maybe Dylan Brooks' spot at the small forward as the season progresses. But like I said, I kind of want to see how it shakes out and who's ready for what roles and whatnot before I kind of just say I want this guy to take this spot. But yeah, I think Dylan's is probably the most like volatile spot, and I think that we have two guys on our bench who I could see taking that spot as the season progresses.
We haven't talked a ton about Tilman Fertitta recently on my show, but he's built a new practice facility, which just opened. He's replacing the roof of the Toyota Center this year. The Rockets also paid for a couple of their coaches to spend several weeks in Turkey with Sengun. He's making bigs for WNBA franchise, NHL franchise. Will, I'm old enough to remember when fans thought Tilman was cheap. You remember that? It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah, that was the consensus on him. It was because of the luxury tax, and I think it was when we was it Trevor Ariza? We kind of just let him walk. Some other things kind of happened. So I remember like those combos rebuild itself and get to where it is right now, exercising that patience. It's a lot of owners in the NBA who let their team undergo a rebuild because you are going to lose money at that point in time. People aren't going to go to the game as much. You won't sell as many jerseys. As soon as last season started, I think we're going to continue to see the dividends of that process going forward in the Houston community. I think he's restored his image personally. So
yeah, I felt like at the time it was a little bit overblown because it was like nickels and pennies, and I didn't feel like any of those moves were going to be huge difference makers. At that time, he came in right after Les had spent a lot of money and kind of built it up, and he came in right at the peak of it, and so it wasn't fair to him. Also because he leveraged everything so he could buy the Rockets, and I felt like he was playing it safe a little bit at the beginning, but at the same time, to say he was cheap and he's spending all this money on U of H and what he's doing for Houston there and what he did with Kelvin Sampson and the money that he spent on Kelvin, I thought you had to give him a little bit of credit for that because, this guy cares. The one thing we knew is he loves Houston. He cares about Houston. He loves sports and he cares about sports.
But I think he's done a really good job as an owner, kind of just stepping back and letting the organization do what it needs to do or too prideful or aren't patient enough but in terms of long-term success of the franchise, like I think that those rebuild years are obviously important. I think we saw how important they were for the Rockets. And then, like you said, with bringing back the Comets and the hockey team and stuff like that, like he is kind of doing more and more. Yeah, we don't talk about him enough for what he's done as an owner of the Rockets lately. No, 100%. Like I said, what he did with UH basketball, what he's going to do now, hopefully bringing back the Comets, bringing back a hockey team. And then, like I said, with the strides he's made with the Rockets in the past. I mean, not in the past, like right now. You love to see it as a fan of the team, of the city.
What do you think is a realistic win total as we get to real Rockets questions right now? What do you think is a realistic win total for him? And do you have a number in mind?
I mean, we won 41 last year with key injuries to a lot of our key guys. We didn't have a backup center on the roster for quite some time. There were some spacing issues. Jalen Green was, I guess you could say, he struggled immensely for like a huge portion of the season. So the recipe for us to not win that many games was kind of there. We were still able to win 41. And so I think if you look at all those things, knock on wood, hopefully we don't have Tari Eason miss 60-something games again, or Sengun miss the last third of the season. Fred missed some time here and there. Like, if we don't see guys go out for prolonged stretches of time this season, we do have, in theory, a backup center now, right? The organization believes a lot in Steven Adams. And even if they don't, I think Jock Landale, he's healthier now than he was last season. So I think, because we saw what he did towards the end of last season. He started becoming more and more playable. So I think even if Steven Adams isn't necessarily ready to, or if he isn't just the backup center, I think Jock Landale hopefully will also be able to kind of step up in that role too. So, we want to see Sengun play the entire game, or Jabari play out of position or we played Jeff Green at the center at times. Like, hopefully we want to do that again this year. We did do something to kind of address the spacing. We brought in Reed Shepherd, and then like Jalen Green just has to be better. And I mean, John Lucas said before last season started, he thought that this was the season that Jalen's going to break out. So if that happens, right, like those are all things that we could point to that led to us falling short last year that have in theory been addressed. And so and just on top of the guys getting a year, they're a year older, they're going to develop more. There's such a thing as continuity. There really isn't that much roster turnover or even coaching turnover, right? So like you kind of know what's expected of you already. Now it's just about executing it. I think that they can, I think they're going to improve obviously from 41. I think that a reasonable prediction for me is anywhere from like 45 to 48. That's kind of where I am in that ballpark. And I think that, like, especially if Jalen Green, mainly him, if he breaks out and shows us kind of what he showed us to end last season in that March, I don't think that like borderline 50 wins is unreasonable, because that's really all that this team was missing.
Yeah, you talk about injuries, but I feel like there's so much depth with this team. Other than an injury to Fred, I feel like he's the most valuable. We saw him win without Sengun last year, and then still no Tari, no Steven Adams, all these guys that we're expecting to potentially be healthier this year. So it's just Fred, really. He's the key guy. If he goes down, there could be a bigger problem. But even Fred going down, they've got a lot more depth and ability to handle it, assuming that, maybe you can get Reed Shepherd up to speed. Amen Thompson, definitely better than, last year. If he got hurt early in the year, what did you have? It was basically Amen Thompson wasn't ready at that point, and he was injured as well.
Yeah, and that was another guy who got hurt early on. Then he was sick even when he came back. So it took him a minute to kind of get into rhythm. And then once he got into rhythm, that's when we saw him kind of take off. So like I said, if we just see stuff like that from the jump this year, like I said, I don't see why. Like I think that we're for sure going to improve. And then you look at like 48 wins is just 7 more wins than we had last year. And I don't think that's like a super duper unreasonable mark to ask of this team at this point in time with everything that I kind of illustrated.
What do you want to see from Udoka's offense that we did not see last year? Because he said he simplified it in their first season just to get guys acclimated. I
mean, I think a lot of it, and I hate to pin it all on him, but I think a lot of it kind of comes down to what we see from Jalen. Because for as good as Fred VanVleet is, he is like the reason why he's not, even though he averages 8, 9, 10 assists a game, the reason why you don't have him in the same conversation is like a Trae Young or a Chris Paul or a James Harden, Luka, like the best playmakers in our league, is because he's very limited as a creator on ball. He's undersized. There's certain passes that he just can't make. He's really good at like executing like the rudimentary offense and running the pick and roll and keeping turnovers low, but he's not making high level reads because that's just not really his game. And not saying that Jalen Green can do that, but Jalen Green can do something that Fred can't, which is he has scoring gravity, or in theory, he should have scoring gravity, right? With especially what we saw from him in March. So I think that if Jalen Green kind of emerges more this year, I think we'll see less on ball. Fred's still gonna have on ball responsibilities, but I think we'll see less on ball responsibility from Fred. And I think Jalen will kind of see an uptick in on-ball responsibility. And I think then you can start really getting into like the really creative sets and stuff like that, because you have someone who's capable of like I said, having his own scoring gravity, but then hopefully he kind of develops more as a ball handler on the pick and roll. We've already seen that the 2-man game between Jalen and Sengun can work really well. So if he's able to kind of, like I said, really break out, that 2-man game can really develop. I think you can start seeing Ime's offensive playbook really open up. I think that's how it opens.
Were there actions that you said, "Oh, I don't see this. We're going to incorporate this," or is there anything in particular that you were seeing last year that you thought was missing or just wasn't creative enough?
No, because like I said, I understood why he had to simplify it. You go back and you watch the Steven Silas era of Rockets basketball, and it's night and day from what it was when Silas was here to Udoka. I mean, so coming from that, and you look at we're struggling to make the simple reads. I'm not mad at Udoka for saying, all right, just last year, these same guys couldn't do the simple stuff. So before I introduce the complex, I'm going to show them the simple things. And I think sometimes the simplicity works of it. You probably could see Udoka be a bit more creative offensively, but to me, the offense kind of came down. The problems with offense wasn't necessarily with the execution. I think a lot of it was just, I hate to do it, I think Jalen Green really held us back. And then I think that the fact that we couldn't really shoot, right? We couldn't capitalize when Sengun would draw two, or we couldn't capitalize when Fred would kick it out. If we could start capitalizing on those things, and like I said, and then hopefully Jalen Green does start becoming the version of him that we saw to end last season, you'll see the offense be more creative. So there's not really much more that I want to see from last season. I think this season's the year we'll kind of start seeing more of it.
When you say shooting, it's Jalen also too.
Yeah, he's part of his Jalen. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think Dillon Brooks, he started really hot, but then as the season kind of went on, he didn't shoot that well.
But he basically gave you what his typical numbers are from 3-point range, just maybe even a little bit better.
His numbers are, and I not to disrespect Dillon, his numbers are skewed because of how hot he started. Like I said, I'll look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure if you look at 2024, from January, I don't think he shot that well from three. I could be wrong, so I'll look it up quickly while we talk. But yeah, like Amen Thompson, same thing. I
don't know if you're going to get much more from Amen, and you know Sengun's the other guy that can't shoot, but Sengun was one of the guys that was trying to open up shots for other people. So you didn't necessarily need him to shoot, you just needed him to open up the shots, and he was opening up the shots, but you didn't have guys out there that were doing it. And I kind of keep going back to Jalen because he was the weakest of those guys. I mean, Amen really didn't take the shots anyway, so it didn't, he didn't matter. And a lot of the year when Sengun was opening up shots, Amen wasn't playing. He just got back kind of rolling when Sengun went down. So, it's just that's my thing. It just kind of we can go in circles, and we're going to get to Jalen in a second, but it kind of keeps coming back down to him. And I do want to ask you about each member of the young core, but first just want to remind our audience, share your thoughts in the YouTube comments. What do you think about all this, guys? And click the like button to support the show. This month, we celebrate our 11th anniversary as a podcast. Where's my Supermax contract? That's 11 years right there. But you can watch our live Texans postgame shows also right after each and every Texans game. Great reason to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. All right, Will, let's get into this, and give me one thing you would like to see improve from each of the Rockets' young core. And I'm going to go one by one. It could be physically, it could be mentally. And let's just start with, we were talking earlier, Jalen Green. What's the one thing that you want to see from Jalen Green?
I'll get into. I just want to finish the last thing. Dillon Brooks shot 33% from three since 2024 started. So, like I said, he struggled a bit too. Some other guys I could probably go into with the shooting. But for Jalen, with him, it's just consistency. That's all it is. And I think a lot of it is mental. Not really sure what aspect of that, but I do think a lot of his struggles are mental. But with him, it's just being consistent. And because we see you have the months like March where he's one of the best players in our league, and you can clearly see that the talent is there. There's things that he can do that other guys just physically just can't do. And then there's nights or months, I think the month of December was really rough for Jalen. I can't remember if I think it was February too, but he had two really, really rough months where it's the highs are there and the lows are just as low. And so if he can find a way to get rid of the low lows, and not necessarily saying he has to play at the level he played at in March for the entire season, because if he did that, he's probably a top 15 player in our league at that point. I'm not saying he has to do that, but just finding a medium between the two and not, swaying always in one direction or the other. If he can find a balance between that, I think that's what the biggest thing for Jalen.
What's the one thing you want to see Sengun improve?
I mean, I think the easy answer is like defense, but I think even then he's kind of improved there. I would love to see him improve as a spacer, but I don't know how much of that's going to happen, especially next season, just because, centers usually don't develop jumpers like that. He does have good form, good touch, so maybe like he can kind of expand his range. But if I had to just like add something to his game, I think I would want to see him add not saying like a league average jumper, but maybe if he took like 3 a game, converted them at 33-34%, I think I would be really cool with that. But I don't know how realistic that is.
He can't abandon his mid-range shot the way he did either in the last few months. I think that was a big problem too, right?
Yeah, he got to go back to. I mean, the thing is also with the reason why it's really hard for me to talk about Sengun is he always comes back with something new. So I already know he's going to come back with some improvement to his game. It's really difficult for me to like point out what he needs. Like I said, obviously the defense could continue to improve, and like I said, I would love to see him improve as a shooter. But outside of that, I'm not really sure like if there's like one specific thing that I could be like, okay, I want to see him improve at this, because he was, like I said, he was so good already.
What's the one thing you want to see Jabari improve?
I want to see him get stronger. There was a lot of times last season where, because he's probably like 6'11", borderline 7 feet tall, but then I would see like smaller guards push him out the way going to the rim, and it's like those are, it's okay to get moved by Joel Embiid, those big guys, but you can't let the small guys push you out the way. And so I want to see him get better at that. I think that'll help him with his rim protection. I think it'll help him, on the perimeter, help him to contain drives a lot more. I think that's just kind of what he needs. And I guess to stop going, I think he also kind of at times will go up weak around the rim. So I think maybe getting stronger might help him there in that department as well.
This next guy, you can go a couple of different directions with. I'm interested to see which one you'll pick. What's the one thing you want to see Amen Thompson improve?
The handle. I know people want me to say the jumper. It's the hand. The handle for me I think his handle is a bigger like limitation to his game than his jumper, because for as good of a rebounder, defender, he can play in the dunker spot, he can cut. Like, for as good as he is at all those things, matter of fact, I could almost argue he's elite at all of those things. I think he's an even better playmaker, and you don't see that because you can't put the ball in his hands as much as you would want to, right? Because he might turn the ball over, he can't get to his spots. If his handle gets to a point where he can start running the offense a bit more consistently and get into his spots more consistently, I think you will see him be able to leverage the fact that, like, yeah, he can't shoot, but that dude's one of the best athletes in the entire world. He can get to the paint whenever he wants to if he has a handle. And then you can leverage that to find shooters or find people in the dunker spot, run the pick and roll, different stuff like that. Like, I want to see more of that from Amen Thompson next season. And so for me, it's like I said, the handle is more important than the jumper for me.
It's much easier. I don't know if you feel this way too, but I think it's just much easier to improve his handle in a significant way over 3 or 4 months in an offseason than the jump shot.
Yeah. I mean, I think he made, if you look at where his handle was from like preseason, his rookie season to where it ended, I think it was just in that year span, it got better. It's obviously still very much a work in progress. But I remember like in preseason, Amen couldn't even stand still without losing the ball. He would just be standing with the ball in his hands and he would lose it. I mean, so it's kind of in the season where, he's not necessarily playing on ball as much as you thought he would coming into the league, although he transitioned really well to the kind of the off ball wing role. But when he would get opportunity to kind of bring the ball down the court or push it in transition, I stopped holding my breath as much. It was like, okay, I think he's kind of getting better at keeping the ball in control. So just continue to improve upon that. I think it's the biggest thing for him.
We didn't see Tari Eason a bunch last year, so it's hard to say like what.
I know it is for Tari. Tari has a easy one for me.
Yeah, what is the one thing you want to see Tari Eason improve?
Decision making, just IQ and decision making. He has to, like I said, we didn't see it as much because he was hurt, but he has like, and I'm kind of going to piggyback on some things I'm going to say about Cam, but when he has the ball, whether it's in his hands or if he's pushing the ball in transition, something like that, like just making the smart decision with it. Sometimes he'll go up with a shot that's just like, all right, that really wasn't the shot, or like you're contested there, move the ball. And he's so good to where like he'll go up with a bad shot, he can come down with the rebound for it and make a play from there. So like it doesn't hurt us as much. But there are like, that is something that I do want to see. Like I've seen Tari have a 2-on-1 fast break and not execute. And it's like stuff like that has to get cleaned up. But that's something I'm not even really worried about. He's another player who I think is really phenomenal already, and has something like a pretty easy thing he can work on.
Last guy on the list, Cam Whitmore. Yeah. What's the one thing you want to see Cam improve?
He has every problem Tari Eason has, but like times 10. He has the IQ concerns. With him, it's like like I said, he'll try to dunk on 4 people if you let him. He'll take a shot over 3 people contested if you let him. Like, there was so many times last season where somebody would be wide open and like Fred or Sengun will be pointing like, hey, Jabari is wide open or Fred's wide open, like swing the ball. And Cam is like loading up to shoot over 2 people. And it's like stuff like that has to get cleaned up. I think he did kind of do somewhat of a good job. It was Summer League, but he did move the ball a bit more in Summer League. So I guess that's encouraging to see that it is. It's very like he's aware. That's when he gets to work on. But yeah, that to me, that is, I think he has probably the most deadly, outside of Jalen Green, I think he has the most deadly flaw out of everybody I just talked about. But if he cleans it up, I mean, the talent as a scorer, he, like I said, same thing with a lot of these guys. He can do things just because of how naturally talented he is that other guys just like physically cannot do. So if he's able to clean it up, I mean, he's going to be an amazing player in our league.
With the Rockets losing AJ Griffin, are there any available veteran free agents you'd like to see them sign, or would you like them to keep maybe that open spot in case they want to make a 2-for-1 trade or have some sort of flexibility? And I'll just throw out some names who I saw are still available in free agency. You've got Markelle Fultz, Robert Covington, Jay Crowder, Doug McDermott, Nasir Little, any of those guys, or how would you proceed with that open spot?
I'm very shocked Markelle Fultz hasn't found a home yet. I know he's limited in what he can do, especially like as a shooter. But I thought he was really good for the Magic, especially like not this season, but last season. I thought he was actually like really, really good for them. So I'm surprised somebody isn't taking a swing on him. I don't know how much he would play in Houston because we do know that they're really, really high on Reed Shepherd, and that's kind of probably the backup point guard this year. So if we had to sign anyone, it probably would be him. But I probably wouldn't even like sign. I would probably wouldn't sign nobody just because like we're already like super duper deep at every position on the team. We got a point guard, backup point guard, 1 through 5. We pretty much have a backup for our backups, right? Like you could say Aaron Holiday is a 3rd string point guard is better than a lot of the guys who are on the free agent market right now, or like Jock Landale, same thing there. He's behind Sengun and Steven Adams in the depth chart. You could argue he's a lot better. So there's a lot of guys on this team. Jay Tate's another guy who probably deserves minutes. If he was on a different team, probably would get minutes, and he's probably not going to get minutes next season. So I'm not really sure where a free agent acquisition would kind of fit in on this team. If there was somebody out there who like had like some leadership intangibles, and it's like this would probably be a good addition to our locker room in terms of like leadership and helping guys develop, I would be behind that, but I'm not really sure who that guy is or if he exists. So yeah, I probably would just keep the spot open if possible, and then, like I said, keep it flexible for like a 2-for-1 or something like that.
They would have to be comfortable knowing that they're not in the rotation, number one. Number two, they're going to sign for somewhere close to the league minimum, because from what I understand with the AJ Griffin deal is that he took some money but not the whole thing. So there's still at least the vet minimum, but maybe there's a little bit more, but not much. So
it's not much,
yeah, there's not much that they can pay that person. And these guys obviously they need a job right now. So and there's veterans. You would assume somebody like Doug McDermott, he's been around for a while, been under Pop, been under Rick Carlisle. You would think somebody like him would give you some leadership. Markelle Fultz, point guard, and the thing about Markelle Fultz is, it'd be nice just to have somebody around in case, because Fred's going to get hurt at some point this year. So if he gets hurt and say Reed Shepherd's not ready to handle point guard for you, if you don't want to go with the Aaron Holiday deal like we did last year, maybe a Markelle Fultz would help you a little bit at the point guard position, because everybody says, oh, well, you've got all these guys. There are injuries. We saw it last year. Injuries happen. Sometimes they happen one after the other. And don't forget, we got a ton of back-to-backs this year. And so, you don't know which guys they might want to just give a guy a night off or something like that on a back-to-back. What Udoka wants to do with that.
I think another thing that makes it really difficult, though, for like a point guard to be, I mean, it's difficult for anybody, honestly, but particularly for a guard, is there's a lot of guys on this team who could occupy like primary ball handler duties on a night-to-night basis. Like I said, I think Fred, obviously, he currently is the lead ball handler. But if Jalen Green breaks out, I think we're going to see, he's not necessarily going to play point guard, but I think we're going to see the ball in his hands a lot more than it has been in the past. Amen Thompson is someone who, like I said, I'm really high on. If he breaks out, if his handle tightens up, you can put the ball in his hands a lot more. Reed Shepherd, someone who we already know the organization's high on, and we saw what he did in Summer League. The ball can go to his hands. And then like now that's 4 guys who are just in the rotation. Then you can start talking about, Aaron Holiday, who I think is more of a 2 guard than a 1, but I think he's capable at running it. So it's really difficult. Like I do think Markelle Fultz is a good player. And like if we signed him, I'd probably be pretty happy with that. Is it like, especially if all those guys I listed take care of business, which I hope they will, there probably won't be that many minutes for him anyways. And so it's just like signing him. Like I said, I think that you could probably argue that the guy that we signed shouldn't be a depth piece. It probably should be a leadership, like a locker room presence. I feel like that might be more valuable because, someone who's not necessarily going to play, but they'll be in the huddles, they'll be in practice. They'll be, be there to kind of be an extension of the coaching staff. I think that probably, you could argue that's probably more valuable than at this point, like a 4th string guy, because we have so much depth at every position anyway. So that's probably where I'm at with it. But like I said, if it's Markelle Fultz, I think I'd be okay with that.
I don't know if we've talked about this before, but if there was one guy that you would bet on making a big jump this year of the Rockets' young guys, who would it be?
It needs to be Jalen. I wouldn't put money on Jalen, but it needs to be. But if I had my answer is Amen. I'm super duper high on Amen Thompson. I was high on him coming into the 2023 NBA draft, and then I was obviously ecstatic that we were able to draft him. He just does things that you can't put into like the box score just won't show how good he is at like I think you could argue he's one of the best defenders in the entire league right now. I'm not sure if he'll get the minutes to get it, but I think if he was playing a consistent like 27, 28 minutes a night, I think he'd make an all-defensive team. I think he's that special defensively. We know what he can do as a rebounder. He's one of the best rebounders in our league. Like he finds a way to be in the right spot at the right time. He can cut. Like I said, he has the playmaking chops. The handle isn't necessarily there for him to show it off just yet, but he has the ability. He showed us last season. There was a couple of times where he would throw a pass, and you're just like, there's no one on this roster who's capable of throwing that pass with Amen Thompson. So I think if we see him kind of continue to grow and develop, I think he's the guy who I would predict the breakout. He's probably, like you asked me at the start of the show, who could like earn starting spot. I think Amen would be the guy who could really push Dillon Brooks out the starting 5. If I was betting money, I would bet Amen. But like I said, I'm crossing my fingers that it's Jalen.
You and Bradeaux just had a special guest on your show, right? Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, we had Craig on the show. Episode premiered Saturday.
Craig Ackerman.
Yeah, Craig Ackerman, yeah, the Rockets broadcaster, and he was, he's an amazing guest. One, he gave us a lot of gems for people out there who were trying to, if you wanted to kind of fall in his footsteps or get into some sort of sports broadcasting, radio personality, stuff like that. Like if that's kind of what you want to do professionally, what better than Craig Ackerman to kind of get some tips and tricks from? And he gives for 15, 20 minutes, he just goes and just talks about different things you can do to put yourself in those doors. And we talk about the Rockets. I probably could have talked with Craig for like another hour, and it wouldn't have felt forced. It was just like, we can't have a 2-hour podcast. People wouldn't listen to that. But that's how good of a guest he was.
Great guy. I worked with him. It's a couple decades ago now. It was before he became the Rockets broadcaster, but I had a chance to work with him when I was working on the Rockets telecast, and not a ton, but we worked enough together where I just thought, yeah, this really, really good guy, and couldn't be happier for, him getting that position once Gene stepped down. And, he had earned it. He had been around there and worked in the organization for a long time, did a lot of stuff with the Houston Comets back in the day too. So yeah, Craig's really good. And glad you guys could get him on the show. Before we say goodbye, I just want to let our viewers know that I'm going to have video links at the end of this with the shows that I've done recently with Rockets analyst Frank and Mitty, plus a tribute to the Rockets broadcast legend Gene Peterson that we did earlier this summer. In case anybody's missed any of our Rocket shows, there'll be links. I interviewed a couple of Gene's colleagues, an old school Rockets broadcaster and a Rockets beat writer who wrote a book about the 94 championship. So definitely check that out. And in the next couple of weeks, I've scheduled the author of a brand new Akeem Olajuwon biography that's coming out really, really soon. Definitely looking forward to that. Will, thanks so much for taking the time, and let's do this again soon, man. Good to talk to you.
Anytime.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.